Welcome to Master Your Market. I'm Chris Ashmore. When you find yourself on morning television or on radio talking about your expertise, you know you've probably hit the jackpot in terms of credibility as an expert. Not only is it validation of your authority, you're also getting your personal brand in front of thousands of people. So how do you get yourself on telly or on the radio? Well, you're more likely to be invited or accepted if you're a published author. A book confirms to people and to producers and editors that you have that expertise. Andrew Griffiths is a regular guest on TV and radio, thanks largely to the books he's written on marketing and business. The clincher, of course, is, as you'll soon find out, he's an engaging personality. Andrew explains the benefits of being a published author and what you need to do to publish a book. Well, Andrew, to start with, thank you and welcome to Master Your Market. We're talking books today and you're the book master. Do you remember the first time you wrote or authored your book and why you did it?
Thanks, Chris. Great to chat to you as always. Yeah, I do remember. It was 25 years ago. This is actually my 25th year anniversary as an author. And my first book was 101 Ways to Market Your Business. Very creative title, and what it says is what it did. There are 101 ideas in there, and I wrote it at the time. Realistically as a time management tool, probably more than anything else, because I was getting asked all these questions all day long by small business owners in my marketing company, but they would, they didn't have any money. I couldn't take them on as clients, but it was like, I'm basically running a not-for-profit marketing company here. So initially it was like, okay, what are all the questions that I get asked? I made a big line list and I started making fact sheets so people could come into the office and grab them, or we could fax them through back then. And then one day I had 50 of these sheets on the wall and I kind of went, maybe if I did another 50, I could put them together as a book, 101 Ways to Market Your Business. And that's what I did. And I reached out to a publisher and beyond my wildest belief, they said, great, yeah, we'd love to publish it. And I went, really? And then I had to write it and, go away and do it. So, and I was very lucky because the first book was really successful. And it was a simple book. It was easy. It was written for small business owners. The whole point of it was his ideas to help you make money without a whole lot of time, not costing a lot of, or not needing a whole lot of skill. So it was very purpose driven and solve people's problems. I learned a great deal from that book.
Well, I suppose that's the main thing. There's an itch out there that people want to learn something, and you delivered that. So that was 25 years ago, is that right?
Yeah, yep.
And since then, you've written, 14 now?
14, just working on 15 and 16 at the moment. Yeah, I know. Amazing. Oh. Sold in 65 countries now, translated into, I think, about 15 different languages as well. So, mainly around that business theme, Chris. As I've evolved, I think my books have evolved. Of course, I did quite a lot in the 101 series, 101 Ways to, exceed your customers' expectations and to advertise and, all those kind of things. I wrote a personal development book called The Me Myth, which is about empathy and my story. My latest book, Someone's Got to Be the Most Expensive, It May As Well Be You, which is very timely. And now I'm working on, my next book is Bigger, how to be bigger, what it looks like to be bigger. What does that really mean? So part personal development, part business, part everything.
Well, they say everyone's got a story in them, but you've got many, many, many stories. How important for you? I mean, this podcast is Master Your Market, and part of that is, getting the word out there, particularly for business coaches or solopreneurs or thought leaders. How important have these books been for you over the years?
Yeah, they've been transformational. They've completely changed my world in so many different ways. If you think about it, I was running a little marketing company in Cairns when I wrote that first book. And so go forward now to what I do at a global level and the people that I work with and all of that, kind of stuff. None of that would have happened if I hadn't written a book. And it's an incredible differentiator. I think that's what it was. But even more so, the books just seem to stand the test of time, Chris. You know, when you write a book, people look at you differently. And if you write a good book and publish a good book, and people read it and say good things about it, your credibility factor goes through the roof. So you open up new revenue opportunities. That's when I really became a keynote speaker as well, because I was the authority on marketing. So next thing, Telstra rang me and said, we want you to come and do a roadshow in 38 cities around Australia and do a marketing thing. I'm going, okay, oh my God, my imposter syndrome kicked in big time, and so many things. But then, the ABC are ringing. I'm on in the financial review, just with small business angles. It really differentiated me and gave me an enormous amount of credibility that I had no idea that a book would do that. I'm not a writer. I'm a commercial diver by trade. So, I didn't have this. I've never, my aspiration was to always be a writer. I fell into it. But it's incredible what it has done for my life. Absolutely incredible.
Well, I've seen you on TV and heard you on radio and read your articles in newspapers and magazines and so on. Without the books, do you think you would not have been able to get your head on TV, do you think? Or
absolutely.
Would it have been harder?
It would have been a lot harder. The book, a great book opens doors. That's the interesting, that's the interesting part about this, is it's like there's something about the credibility, and thinking a bit about it. If the media want to interview someone and there's two people, one's got a book and one hasn't, odds on they're probably going to interview the person with the book. You know that stuff, mate. Speaking is the same. Two people to speak at a conference, one's got a book, one hasn't. The one with a book tends to get more of a look in and can charge more because of the associated credibility, that it comes with that. And that was really the big shift that I found different. When I ran my marketing company before the book, I was always kind of hustling and, looking for clients and looking for opportunities. With writing of the book and leveraging that book, the opportunity flow changed. So rather than me needing to go and chase it all the time, all these opportunities started to come to me, and I had to get better at handling opportunities rather than getting better at hustling to try and create opportunities. And again, I had no idea that was really going to happen. It was just all of a sudden I had this credibility piece, and I wrote a good book that worked. And that meant that people wanted to work with me. And I'd get people that would ring me and say, I'm halfway through your book on marketing. I want you to do all of our marketing. And it was like, so my marketing company did really well, off the back of the book as well.
Right. When you get yourself on TV and radio, do you use a PR agent, or do you?
Both, to be honest, Chris. It's actually quite a lot easier to get on media than people realise. Sometimes it's like you ring Sunrise and you talk to the producer, or you send an email to the producer and say, hey, this is who I am, this is what I do. Sometimes you can, it isn't a lot harder than that, because what I've learned over the years is that the media really need people with some credibility to be able to talk on topics that matter. So it's a bit about how you approach. So I've definitely used PR firms. Like when I launch a book, I'll engage a PR firm for it and do maybe a 6-month campaign or something. Excuse my little thumbs up. But otherwise, I've also got no hesitation in reaching out to media as one saying, look, this is who I am. I know that I have, a lot of credibility with the books and and that opens the door for me. But I've also done that for the last, 25 years before I really had a bigger brand and more cred, that I would reach out to editors of newspapers or, radio, find the show producer of whatever it might be and send them some information, etc. And what I always tried to showcase was really how valuable I could be as some talent, I guess, is to use that language. Yeah. So I would showcase have a media document. These are all the topics I can talk about. This is my area of expertise. These are my books. So rather than trying to get a one-off, appearance, I'm always looking to do regular stuff. So, and regular columns. I mean, I was on a Brisbane radio station for, I think, 3 years every Wednesday morning. Those kind of things are really valuable for building your brand unbelievably as well. So sometimes you just got to have the courage to reach out.
Well, that's it. Well, having the courage to write the book in the first place, and then having the courage to get the mug on TV, but obviously you need to be engaging enough for them to want you to come back. So there's that skill or that experience of being able to talk well and engaging on TV or radio.
Yeah,
that's something else entirely.
It is, and I think the more you do, obviously the better you get. I mean, I don't think I was naturally very good at being on radio. I mean, I've got a bottle of bourbon, 80 Marlboro a day kind of voice, which is handy, but it doesn't help you in newspaper. But I learned to go, okay, well, I solve a need, for a media platform. I listen to either the interviewer or the journo or whatever it is. I provide great value. I'm very responsive. I'm accessible. I've just learnt to be all of those kind of things, and also, not to try and be, cheap plugging, buy my book kind of stuff. That's the last thing. If I was doing that on this interview, Chris, you'd never call me again. You'd be going, it's just, it's the Andrew Griffiths show, just trying to flog books. And I've interviewed people. I mean, I remember having this amazing experience where I was interviewing Michael Gerber, the guy who wrote the E-Myth, and every second line he was talking about, in the dream room, my new product. Will talk about that, Andrew. I won't talk about it now, but people can come to the dream room. And no matter how hard I pushed to try and get him, he's a grandfather of small business, to give us some wonderful insights. It was a terrible, terrible interview because it was just about this new product he was launching, and I was so disappointed. So you got to be media friendly and accessible and become a great source so that people reach out to you. And so now I get contacted all the time by people in the media going, oh, look, Andrew will do a great job here. Koshi's team call me. Can you come to Sydney and do something with us? Yeah, of course. Great. Because of all of those things. Easy to work with, reliable, got something to say. I'm a professional. I'll turn up, I'll deliver, and I've learnt to be better at that probably, Chris, than when I started out, I think.
Right. Well, for anyone listening to this who is considering writing a book or has been cautious about doing it, how do they get started? What's the process?
I think it's interesting. So just as an aside, apart from writing books, I'm a book writing coach, and I've helped about 1,000 people to write and publish their first book. I'm just about to turn over the 1,000 mark, which is a heck of a lot of first-time authors when you think about it. And I'm actually more proud of that than I am of writing my own books, to be really honest. And I think there's a few things. I think that we got to get out of our way of going, oh my God, I've got to be this awesome writer. I was not an awesome writer when I first started writing. And I actually remember my publisher, Ian Bowring, he rang me. They had this messy manuscript of mine. And his line was, Andrew, we've got this document of yours. And I went, okay. And he said, it looks like it was written by a drunken, dyslexic, heroin-addicted chimpanzee. And which is the best line I've ever heard. And
no,
I said,
no offense to chimpanzees,
or dyslexic or heroin addicted chimpanzees. And I said, well, okay, thanks, Ian. I'm not really sure why we're talking. And he said, your writing is horrible, but your content is fabulous. We can fix bad writing, but we can't create great content. Your stories, your advice, and that was a great lesson for me, because I think a lot of people who could write a book, they don't, because they think they've got to be this amazing writer. You don't. That's what, you have editors, you have people that help you do that kind of stuff. What's more important is that you've got something worth saying. The world doesn't need another leadership book by some fat 60-year-old guy like me saying, this is my view on leadership. It's got to be more. There's got to be, you've got to have something of substance that you want to say. You've got to know who your reader is. You've got to be going, okay, well, normally it's your ideal client. Right? So, you write a book I wrote my first book 100% at my small business clients, and I knew what their problems were because I was answering the questions all day, every day. So writing the book, there was like, that was easy to answer that because I was testing it every single day. So I knew that this stuff worked, and also I'd done it with them and I knew it produced results. So if you're a coach, or if you're an advisor in some shape or form, you got a pretty good idea what your clients' problems are. And if you haven't got solutions for them, well, you're probably not a very good coach. So odds on you already know how to do all that kind of stuff. So that's the basis of what your book is. You show what it is that you figured out, what your frameworks, what your models are, what your stories are. You don't have to split the atom. You've got to solve problems, and you've got to know your ideal reader really well. And that's kind of the place where we start. When I'm working with people, we develop what is called a book plan or a book pitch document. And that's really where you start. Who am I writing it for? What's the burning problem they want solved? What processes or frameworks have I got that are going to be of value to them? What's going to make my book unique? Go out and do some research. If you're just going to say again the same thing that other people have already said, well, there's probably not a lot of value in that. But also don't overthink it. I think sometimes we think we got to split the atom in our book. You've got to solve problems. You got to have your stories, your take, your perspective is where the great value lay. And that's why I've been successful. None of what I write about is earth-shattering. Honestly, it's not. And I'm okay with that. I don't need to write the latest revolutionary piece about doing business. What I write about is very much what I'm addressing on a day-to-day basis, and what I'm seeing happening with my clients and my readers and in the world, and I share my advice and thoughts. So, don't overcook it in your own mind as well. That's the kind of advice that I start off with. Like, have something worth saying, solve problems, know who you're writing for. If someone says to me, I ask, who are you writing it for? And they go, everyone needs to read this. There's not a book on the planet that's been written for everyone. Narrow it down. So, a few kind of things I've just rattled off there, Chris, but my main thing is to say that, most people, have got a book in them. We hear that as a line, but we kind of talk ourselves out of it rather than talk ourselves into it.
Well, it's daunting because it takes a long time to write a book, and they're quite thick. It could take many months.
It's a lot of pages.
So there's that sort of hurdle from the beginning. But one question, publishers,
yep.
Do you recommend going to a publisher or self-publishing?
It's a really great question, mate, and it's changed so much in the last few years. I've done 11 books with traditional publishers, Allen Unwin and Simon & Schuster, and I've self-published 3 books, as well. It depends on the role. I'm talking to publishers at the moment for my next 2 books actually, because there's a different application. If you've got a good client base, and you've got, and what you want your book to do for you. So, for example, you might want it to sell your coaching program or to build speaking or whatever it is. It might be better to self-publish, where you get more say you get total say in the book. If you want to go down a traditional publishing route, it's harder to get a traditional publishing contract, of course. Their criteria is different. You need to have about 20,000 social media connections these days before a traditional publisher will look at you, because they're in the business not to build your business. They're in the business to sell books. So you've got to really look at it from that perspective. 25 years ago, self-publishing was like you'd look down your nose at it, right? It was like the poor cousin of traditional publishing. And that's why, I would have been a snob about it and go, self-publishing. Now, it's a lot different. There's far more providers, there's suppliers. I like to self-publish because I have more control. I can sell as many books through self-publishing. But more for me, it's not about me making $5 out of selling a book. Every book that I print is a seed, and I want to turn that into a $10,000 speaking job. So my philosophy, or a $30,000 coaching package, or a whatever it might be. So for me, it's better to be able to self-publish because I get much better control of that. So I haven't really answered your question there, apart from saying it probably depends a bit on what you want your book to do, but also you're going to be, driven as well by your profile, your social media connections. the book. If there's too many books on a topic, publishers might not have an appetite for it as well. But any publisher, you can go onto their website. There's a process for submitting an idea. They generally don't want to see a manuscript. They want to see the idea first before you do it. So, you can pursue both paths. The main difference being publishers traditionally pay for the process and you get a royalty. When you self-publish, you pay for the whole process, but you keep all the dough. Either way, you got to promote it and market it yourself. When I wrote my first book, Chris, it came back and it was like, I rang my publishers going, so when does the Ferrari arrive? The book's been out for a week, and then I had to have a come to the mountain conversation about I needed to get off my butt and get out there and market it and promote it. It's like, really? I just thought I'll settle for a nice high level Mercedes if there's no Ferraris available, And it was like, yeah, and I learned. It doesn't matter whether you self-publish or traditional publish. It's up to you as the author to really promote it and leverage it.
Gotcha. What books do you like? What are your favourite, say, business books?
I read a lot of books, and I get a lot of books sent to me as well for review. And of course, all my clients, once they publish their books, so I've got shelves out there with hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of books on. My place looks a bit like a Dimick store. I like a combination of new stuff, the Stephen Bartlett stuff, the CEO, 33 33 Ways. I can never remember titles, of books. I like Adam Grant stuff, I like contemporary stuff, but I've got to say, I also do love the classics. I go back and read, the Seth Godins of the world, the Dale Carnegies of the world. I read the Zig Ziglars of the world. They were all very fundamental for me in my early days. But I look at it now, being older and being more experienced as a writer and an entrepreneur. I'm 40 years now as an entrepreneur, and I get more out of those books now than I probably did back then. Being a little bit older and a bit wiser, and the world is changing so rapidly. Not that I feel like a dinosaur in any of that stuff, but I feel so many of the principles from those books are more relevant now than ever. I think about this. There's so much about connection and engagement and relationships and all the rest of it. And in such an AI-driven world, that's pushing us all towards homogenization. Where everyone's the same, right? I think our skill set now has to be more human. And those books, in the era before tech, there was no, faxing, emailing, internet, like rah-rah. It was all about human connection. And I'm finding them very, very powerful at the moment. And of course, I had the pleasure of meeting a lot of those people, from Seth Godin to Zig Ziglar, and over the years in various guises and various kind of roles. I remember once ringing Zig Ziglar's office in Texas, and his receptionist just put me through, and we chatted for 2 hours about books, and
oh, wow.
it's the most amazing conversation with Zig Ziglar, and it was like, wow, who could do that these days? Imagine trying to talk to Gary Vee, or Anthony Robbins or someone like that. So yeah, interesting, isn't it? Yeah.
Absolutely. Well, Andrew, thank you very much for your time. But,
pleasure.
Before we go, you mentioned that you help, business authors or business book authors. Can you tell me if people want to get in contact with you, they're thinking of needing a bit of help, a bit of guidance, how do they get through to you?
There's two ways. I guess just, Google me is the easiest thing. I come up pretty easy, and I'm not the kids' book writer. We've got a funny Andy Griffiths. We get confused all the time. It's hilarious. And we have one day we're going to collaborate on a book and call it The Day My Business Went Psycho. So you andrewgriffiths.com. That's my main site. But I've also got a site called The Author Academy. .com.au, and that's all my author coaching side of things. And some good resources on there as well, if you're looking at being able to kind of get access to a bit of stuff to head in the right direction. And look, I honestly would say too, Chris, that for a lot of people, what stops them from writing a book is this imposter syndrome. And my belief is always the only people that don't have imposter syndrome are the people that should.
Yes.
And you know, you just believe that you have this wonderful, unique set of experiences, your own knowledge, all of that kind of stuff, and that is of value to others. You know, so whatever pathway you go down, whether you write a book or create a podcast or, you know, speak or whatever it is, embrace what makes you unique and your unique knowledge and all of that kind of stuff. That is what the world is craving at the moment. And if you can do that, you'll write a great book, you'll create a great podcast, you'll create a great keynote presentation or whatever it might be.
Oh, well said, Andrew. Thank you. Thank you so much for this, and I hope to be in touch again soon.
I'm sure we'll chat again, Chris. Yeah, you can't get away from me now, mate. I've got my clutches in. You know, so thanks for having me on the show. Always appreciate it, Chris.